DJI are by far the biggest drone manufacturer out there. They account for the biggest proportion of the worldwide drone sales, and if you are going to possibly suggest that one of their drones might have a possible problem, you are going to have to develop very thick skin, because the backlash will inevitably be absolutely huge. And this is exactly what happened when I posted a previous video where I sort of talked about the possibility that the new DJI Mavic 3 might have an inherent problem with its flight altitude indication within the DJI Fly app. Now, this wasn't just a stab in the dark, and this basically came from the fact that I own this guy here. This is the DJI Air 2S, and pretty much since I bought this drone, I have had an issue with the flight altitude indication showing incorrectly. Basically, if you go up too far and come down too quick, what will basically happen is it will show a negative altitude. Now, when I posted my video basically saying that I possibly think that the Mavic 3 might have this problem, you guys absolutely hated it. It was by far my most disliked video I have ever had on the channel. However, let me quickly talk about how I came to the conclusion. Very simply, a video was leaked a couple of days prior to the Mavic 3 actually being launched, and even though I said in the video this, if you look at the terrain, we might have a bit of sort of undulation, for example, and some peaks and troughs in the road, that it could completely be down to the terrain with which it was being flown in that video. What essentially transpired is absolutely loads of you told me I was wrong, and it was very simply because the aircraft was flying below the aircraft takeoff point, which is absolutely fine. I understand that that is the case, and I obviously understand that if I take off from a cliff and then flow below the cliff, that is going to show a negative altitude. I get that, I understand that, which is why I said it's a possibility that this is the case within the video. I just looked at the terrain in that leaked video, and I thought, right, okay, so this guy would have had to have dropped, the terrain would have had to have dropped 15 meters in something like 300 meters. Now, 15 meters isn't a great amount, but when you're only traveling 300 meters in a car, that's quite a gradient, and it didn't particularly look that, which is why I thought that this issue was possibly existing. I have found a few clips on YouTube, and I will link to the YouTubers' channels in the video description below as well, so please do check them out. Just to sort of ascertain whether I was right or whether I was wrong. I could well have been completely wrong about this, but it does turn out, as a matter of fact, I was actually correct. Now, one of the biggest YouTubers actually out there, but yourself confessed that he wasn't given the drone, so posted that honest review, is DC Rainmaker. DC Rainmaker does some absolutely fantastic stuff, and some of his DJI wind tests where he lives is just absolutely out of this world, and he really put the DJI Mavic 3 through its paces. However, it does happen to show the negative flight altitude, and this is to the point where absolutely nobody can deny it. Very simply because you can see at the beginning of the clip where the drone takes off from. You can also see by the time he comes back into land, it is landing at the exact same spot, and for the drone to show a negative altitude, basically, I very much doubt he would still be stood there, because if the landing altitude was below the takeoff altitude, that would mean he would be in the water with some very wet shoes. This other video here, you can see where the drone is taken off from a beach. This YouTuber flies up and down the beach, and you can see when it takes off, the levels are completely and utterly fine. But by the time it comes to land, of course, the beach hasn't gone down. He's still stood in the same place. The flight's only, 30-40 minutes time. Total flight time. I understand the clip is cut up a little bit, but again, we can see where we are landing with a negative altitude, okay? And if those two examples was not enough for you, here's a third. So yet again, you can see the takeoff point is completely flat ground. The takeoff point or takeoff altitude is not going to change in any way, shape or form. Obviously, you cannot fly below that point. The YouTuber goes out and does some flights, and by the time he comes back to land, once again you can see that negative altitude. So guys, you know, I might just be that small YouTuber from the east of England, and I might only have 7,500 subscribers, but it does seem in this case that did not mean I was wrong. Hopefully DJI do fix it, because this is, I would consider, one of the biggest problems. Now you see, the reason I consider it's a bigger problem anyway, most of the laws worldwide limit your flight altitude to 120 meters or 400 feet. Now if the drone was indicating a higher altitude with which it was actually flying at, that would be absolutely fine, because you would have a greater separation from possible manned aircraft. However, because it's showing that it's flying lower than its true actual altitude, that means you could quite easily be breaking local laws and regulations, and without even knowing it, you could be flying above that 120 meter or 400 feet flight altitude ceiling, thus meaning you're possibly putting yourself in the way of manned aircraft. But most importantly, you know, you are potentially breaking the law as well. So this is why I do think it's, you know, a possible problem. And yes, you can go into third-party apps such as AirData UAV, and you can check to see your actual flight altitude, but that's no good when you're on a job. You know, if you're buying this drone, for example, you know, the chances are you're a semi-professional videographer, and, you know, you've possibly had to, depending on where you live in the world, you've possibly had to go, you know, do some risk assessments, you know, and you've got limited airspace because this drone is within a certain weight category. So, you know, it's vital that you are flying within the, you know, the confines of the operational authorization or whatever permission you've obtained. It's quite important to stick to it. Let me know what you think. I understand that this might possibly get a few dislikes as well. I'm absolutely fine with that, because at the end of the day, on this channel, I pride myself on the fact that I call a spade, and I'm completely open and honest with what is going on. And yeah, just wanted to do this little follow-up video really, and I do obviously appreciate all of you that commented on that video and actually supported what my thoughts were as well. I mean, like I say, I might just be a small YouTuber, but I do actually know what I'm talking about. And yeah, it's quite sad that such an expensive drone does have this issue, and like I say, it may well not be a problem for you. I understand that. You may see that it is possibly not a big issue in the grand scheme of things, and if you are flying well below that flight altitude ceiling, then you're going to be all good. But at the end of the day, if you do, you know, want to fly into the you know, the upper air, this could cause an issue, and yeah, you could inadvertently be breaking some laws. So that wraps up the video, folks. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'm always interested to hear what you do have to say, and please do go check out the YouTubers' videos that I have linked in the video description as well. Until next time, thank you very much for watching, and see you again soon.